So we hear this term, let's bring the hobby back to 40K. And there's a duality out there in YouTube where the content creators, the lore channels, the battle reports, the painting tutorial channels that all contribute to the community, they are making the grimdark, they're making 40K of what it is, putting the correct focus of what we should be enjoying with the game. Getting together with our friends, rolling some dice, making some memories happen through the construct of Warhammer 40,000 or Age of Sigmar and other games, although we're focusing and asking the question to make Games Workshop more hobby-oriented. Now, the duality comes where you see what Games Workshop has done in the past, is doing right now, and continues to do to suppress the community, to control the community. And it's easy to get a little bit disheartened by that, but to realize Games Workshop is not going to stop putting out models and materials, but understanding that really at the end of the day, everything they put out, rules, supplements, models, they are at your choice on how to utilize them. They are just suggestions. Now, I'm not saying make up your own rules. We need a rule set as a community that we can communicate back and forth. This idea that if the rules of 40K are 40K, I can play them with my gaming group, and I can then travel out to another gaming group, literally across the world, and have a similar experience and expectation. So I do believe in community standards and the importance of a rule set, not just with 40K, but other wargaming systems that are out there. But it's up to us to say, how do we want to utilize these rules? How do we want to take away from the narrative? And I'm just going to put this out there as a counterpoint. Games Workshop is always pushing new models, is always pushing new FOMO, is always pushing for the next before you've even really built your current models. And is that sustainable or not? That tends to be an interesting question. But what about approaching 40K, understanding that this is not a balanced game? It is not in Games Workshop's best interest or any interest to balance 40K. Because it pulls you out of the cycle, the constant buy cycle. The buy cycle, meaning you have your miniatures, you have your army, you love it, it's great. They release something new. Well, I mean, maybe I'll buy it, but if I really like what I have, do I really need it right now? There's no FOMO. But if they nuke my rules and I don't get that update, or another army gets an update and now things have changed, I have to go out and buy those new. So this constant cycle in the quest to pursue fairness, and I don't know, it's like an American perspective. This idea that we sit down to play a game and it always needs to be fair. It always needs to be balanced. This is a war game. I mean, this is just something to consider. Something to consider to help bring that hobby. This is not a sporting competition. There are events out there that are sport-like events, tournaments, where it kind of has to be fair. What's the structure? What's allowed? What's not allowed? But when you play with your friends, whether it's basement battle reports or part of a bigger club, explore that grimdark. Explore the fact that if we look at the Black Library and the lore, the battles are never fair. Usually it's heroic sacrifices by the Space Marines or lightning raids or these kind of daring and epic battles. I mean, just look at some of the lore from Armageddon and playing that out in the different Black Crusades. Embrace that. Play in that. So here's a great example. One of the most exciting games of 40K that I played was when they released, I think it was the Dark Angels fire base, or it was that base with the giant Dark Angel tower and the las cannon, and it had the strike missile force, and it was along with the Imperial Guard terrain. A friend of mine had an amazing setup of this table. It was literally like a fortification in the center of the table. And we all kind of showed up to play 40K. We all wanted to use the table. And I said, hey, those of us playing Space Marines, I brought my Space Marines. There were 3 Space Marine players versus 8 Chaos players. Now, normally what we would do is just pair up 2 and 2 and you'd play. But in that moment, in that inspiration, it's like, hey, let's have a last stand. I'm going to put down all the Space Marines in my case, and the other players are going to put down all of their Space Marines. Points, value, who even knows? Organization, doesn't even matter. And Chaos is just going to put down all their stuff from every table edge. And they're going to attack this fortress. They're going to attack this fortress. There's no way. Now, stepping back, there is no way I'm going to win. We're like, 8-3, 8-4. And this wasn't even just players. This is literally looking at the sizes of different armies. But what about a heroic last stand? Let's see for glory. Essentially, we were playing for glory. How many turns could I last for the Emperor to go down in the history of the chapters, to go down in the history of the Holy Halls of Terra and the Emperor's throne, fighting for that, while Chaos was fighting for the glory? Who can catch the attention, just a slight glance of the dark gods for tabletop immortality to the ascension of demonhood? That's worth the price of admission. And it was interesting, as soon as we were freed up from this idea of winning and losing, and we're just going to have fun, and we're going to have personal glory, the game was amazing. The game was absolutely amazing. And more, that's how I try to approach 40K. Because Games Workshop there is no balance. I'm not saying tournaments aren't important. I'm not saying don't play matched games, but don't let them rule your hobby experience. Here's another great house rule that I play with some friends. We nominate a single model that is the commander or favored by the Emperor or, kissed by the dark gods, a model on the table, one model that is essentially immortal. It cannot be killed except by another nominated champion or heroic model. So the idea here is you got to earn glory on the table. So we've got the battle going on that we're playing, but we have a battle within a battle. We have a mini battle within another mini battle. So that model can join units. It can work on its own. It can't be wounded, can't be removed out of play. It can only be killed by another model in shooting or single combat nominated. So essentially champion to champion. Essentially it's going back to major heroes and minor heroes in Rogue Trader, if that makes sense. And it's a lot of fun because it's always going to, by like turn 3 or 4, it's going to be an epic showdown. And we're going to seek out that place where we're going to fight on the table and it's going to be decided. And you don't mention your model ahead of time. Now, usually we have an idea because we tend to play certain models and certain champions. I've got the Emperor's Champion. I put him out that model. That's going to nominate. But then at the start of the game, you nominate. And it's interesting because a buddy of mine that was playing Guard, he had like this just sergeant in a squad that was like nominated, favored by the Emperor. Stats are like nothing. Stats are just not that great. But essentially, the light of the Emperor guiding him, he was immortal for this game until he could fight 1-to-1 against my Chaos Champion. And he really didn't stand much of a chance, but it was still an interesting fight because my Chaos Champion was like, he feels a presence on the table. He sees it. He has to stop this individual for the Dark Gods. Like the Dark Gods have nominated him, that sacrifice that must be made. So trying to make it across the table and do that. I say that in that the rules are important, but be willing to break, be willing to bend the rules, be willing to say, look, we're paying all this money and time that Games Workshop is leading us for these models. Like, let's break free. Let's have some fun. Let's do some stuff. Let's try to create some memories on the table. And if that means I lose a game, if that means things are not quite balanced, but we gave it a try, that's okay. Let's use our model collections not as a tournament piece, but as a tool, a physical gateway where we can explore, create, and ideally live those grimdark memories on the table.